The Indianapolis Colts are a bunch of cowards. There's no other way to put it. This Richardson being developed into a good quarterback was this regime's only way out. What on?
Daniel Jones would be our starting quarterback this season. And
how is this man going to fucking develop if he don't play?
I also think they made the decision because they're coaching for their jobs this year too.
But in the case of Richardson, I'm very, very sad because his career looks in jeopardy.
Last year, up and down, more downs than ups.
Look, Anthony is going to have to fight the perception that was created down in Houston.
So unless you've been living under a rock, you have probably heard Colts quarterback and 2023 first round pick Anthony Richardson recently lost his starting job to former New York Giants starter Daniel Jones. To some people, this may not be a shocker, especially if you look at how Richardson played in 2024, which we'll get into in a couple minutes. For others, this may be a huge mistake. AR5 still had a lot of potential, and it's up to coaching and reps to help him get there. Coming into the draft in 2023, people raved over his athleticism at 6'3", 244 pounds. He ran a 4.43 40-yard dash. He had a 40.5 vertical jump and a 129 broad jump. That would place him around the 99th percentile of quarterbacks nowadays. Solely after the combine, people were already calling him Cam Newton 2.0, and he didn't even play a single snap in the NFL yet. And based on that alone, that might not be crazy. The comparisons were almost uncanny. Unfortunately, the Colts didn't see it this way, and they wanted to put the quarterback in who puts him in a better position to win now. Or do they? This could be the writing on the wall for Richardson, or it could light a fire under him that nobody will see coming, and we might see the potential in him come out. With all that in mind, it's time to answer some questions. Did we hype up AR5 too much? Did GMs overvalue him? Did we look too much into traits or production? Well, in order to answer that, let's take it all the way back. Anthony Richardson played his high school football at Eastside High School located in Gainesville, Florida. Not only did Anthony Richardson excel in football, but he also excelled in basketball, making him a two-sport athlete. To be a two-sport athlete, you have to be one hell of an athlete, and that's exactly what he was. During his time at high school, he passed for over 4,633 yards and 37 touchdowns through the air, while also rushed for over 1,633 yards on the ground and 41 touchdowns. Before Anthony even got to college, even the NFL level, he was already going viral for Season 4 of Beyond the Lights, a series which followed quarterbacks through their transition to college football. Now, it's no secret that AR5 had a cannon of an arm. He can make some crazy throws out of the structure. His dual threat ability was always one that had defenses guessing. However, Richardson's mechanics were still raw, his accuracy was still spotty, and his ability to process defenses was also raw. 24/7 Sports even labeled him as a QB who was developmental or prototypical size, athleticism, and arm strength, but noted accuracy and consistencies. Regardless, Richardson was still a 4-star recruit on 24/7 Sports. He didn't have many Power 5 offers outside of Florida and Boston College, and of course, he would stay home and commit to the University of Florida, which is probably a couple minutes away from where he was going to high school at. Richardson would not see the field that much in 2020 as he was playing behind longtime starter Kyle Trask and also Amari Jones. He only had 2 pass attempts for 27 yards, with 7 carries for 61 yards, and as a result, he preserved his eligibility and would enter 2021 as a redshirt freshman. But in 2021, he would still be a backup behind Amari Jones after Kyle Trask left for the NFL. But Amari Jones was also far from ideal as a starter. Ironically, he's a lot like AR, great runner, good arm, but also had a turnover problem, inconsistent accuracy, and decision making. Sounds familiar, right? As a result of his very inconsistent play, a lot of fans were calling for AR5 to come in. Head coach Dan Mullen was even asked, why not bring in AR5? Dan Mullen simply said, like I said, we have 2 really good quarterbacks. You'll see them both play every single game. You know what you never ask? Why don't you ask who the starting running back is? Who started today? In lack of better terms, Amari was a safer option to Dan Mullen, while AR5 was just more exciting. Again, this is going to be ironic. Despite Richardson not starting many games in 2021, if any, he showed a lot of flashes. He had a game in Week 1 versus FAU where he had 160 yards in limited snaps, including a 73-yard touchdown run. Once again against South Florida, in limited snaps, he went 3 for 3 for 152 yards and 115 rushing yards to go with 3 touchdowns. That game right there is why AR5 went viral in the first place and became a viral sensation. He even came in late in a rivalry game versus Florida State and led them to a win with 152 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did have some lowlights, of course, including a 12-20 game against Georgia where he threw 2 interceptions as well, and eventually, the change was going to come. After that loss to UCF in the Gasparilla Bowl, Dan Mullen would be fired after going 6 for 7, and Amari Jones would end up transferring, meaning that paved the way for AR5. Billy Napier would be named the new head coach, and Anthony Richardson would be named as a starter for the 2022 season. When the 2022 season kicked off, all eyes in Gainesville were on Anthony Richardson. For the first time, the 6'4", 240-pound quarterback wasn't a backup, wasn't a rotational piece. He was finally the quarterback one under new head coach Billy Napier. Florida was turning the page, and Richardson was the centerpiece, and right away, he set the college football world on fire. Opening night in the Swamp against number 7 Utah. You already know the Swamp is one of the best atmospheres in college football, and Richardson would end up putting on a show. He threw for 168 yards and would rush for 100 more and score 3 rushing touchdowns, including a jaw-dropping fake spin move that went viral instantly. Florida would end up upsetting Utah 29-6, and suddenly, Richardson was being talked about as a Heisman dark horse. But suddenly, just as quickly as the hype skyrocketed, the growing pains hit. In week 2, he had a pretty bad performance. He struggled badly against Kentucky, going 14 for 35 for 143 yards with 2 interceptions. He looked raw, hesitant, and reminded everyone that he wasn't a finished product. The next week against South Florida, the Gators would win, but Richardson threw no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. The highs were incredible for Richardson, but the lows, they were glaring. But by late September, Richardson would have one of the best games of his college career. Against Tennessee, he threw for over 453 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also ran for 62 yards on the ground and 2 more scores, and nearly willed Florida to an upset victory over Tennessee in Knoxville. That game was the perfect snapshot of Anthony Richardson. Explosive, uncontainable, capable of carrying the offense on his back, but consistency was always the issue for him. Against Georgia, he was smothered. Against Vanderbilt, he was erratic. And against Florida State, close to the regular season, he accounted for 3 touchdowns, but also he was 9 for 27 on pass attempts. By the end of the season, he threw for over 2,549 yards through the air, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, while just completing 53.8% of his passes. On the ground, he rushed over 600 yards and 9 more touchdowns, cementing himself as one of the most dangerous dual-threat quarterbacks in the SEC. He would go 6-6 as a starter that year, and after the season ended, it was announced that Richardson would skip his bowl game against Oregon State to prep for the NFL draft, after declaring shortly after the season ended. For some, Richardson had the tools to become a good quarterback, but most people knew this guy was going to be a huge project. Jordan Reed, who specializes in college football in the NFL draft, was some of the best when it came to Richardson. He'll be the ultimate project prospect. While he is still developing a lot of key ingredients that to be successful at the next level, there is no questioning his traits and upside. His accuracy, decision making, and consistency have to get better, and a good landing spot is vital for long-term success. Draft aficionado Mel Kiper called AR a boomer bust quarterback, saying, "The passing, he's got the howitzer, the rocket arm, but accuracy and seeing the field are things he needs to work on. Another year at Florida would have benefited him, but he's going to be a top 10 pick, developing the NFL. So for Anthony Richardson, I've said boomer bust." While some people were comparing him to Cam Newton, a lot of people compared him to Josh Allen. If you don't remember, Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming was a lot like AR5. He had the dual threat ability. He was a large frame quarterback, but his mechanics and accuracy was also a huge thing that Josh Allen needed to work on. And now look at Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and in my opinion, he is no worse than number 3 when you rank any quarterback in the NFL. Both of these guys' decision making in college was pretty spotty. They had somewhat of the same rushing numbers, although it seems like AR5 focused a lot more through the ground, but you can pretty much see where the comparisons came from if you look at the numbers. That was pretty much everyone's thoughts. Raw quarterback with next level tools who was going to need to come to the right team to take that next step. Originally, he was only getting around early second round hype, but after his insane combine, he was now getting the first round hype. He even got a perfect RAS score, putting him in elite company with Cam Newton and Dante Culpepper, the only 3 quarterbacks in history to get a perfect score. The 4th overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft, the Colts took a chance on the young high potential prospect in Anthony Richardson. Chris Ballard was asked his thoughts on why he took Anthony Richardson, and he made a very good statement. Sometimes you just gotta take a shot at it. I didn't want to look up and watch him become a superstar somewhere else. If he's gonna become a superstar, he's gonna become a superstar for the Colts. And that pretty much sums up AR as a prospect. This guy's traits were worth taking a risk on. Or would they be? Now heading into the 2023 NFL season, many people expected AR5 to sit on the bench and maybe come in later on. While AR5 had the traits, a lot of people also thought that throwing him to the Wolves early on would not do anything for his career. But in a twist, the Colts announced that going into week 1, Anthony Richardson would be named the starter. While AR had the tools, again, he was still raw. Some people thought the Colts were just doing too much, throwing him to the fire too fast. He was not ready to be a week 1 starter, but the Colts were still doing this. Richardson was just 20. He didn't need to be put in the fire immediately, one of the youngest quarterbacks in the league. But nonetheless, that's what happened. In his first regular season NFL game, he went 24 for 37 for 1 touchdown and 1 interception in a 21-31 loss to the Jags. A pretty solid debut for the most part. However, in week 2 against the Texans, he suffered a concussion and he would be out for the rest of the game. He would come back in week 4 versus the Rams, going 11 for 25, which is a 44% completion percentage for 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He also had 56 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. Once again, another okay performance. However, that would be his final game of 2023, ending his rookie year just like that. He was already having a nagging injury to his shoulder, and he would end up having to have surgery, putting him out for the rest of the season. In just 4 games played, Anthony Richardson threw for over 500 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception, while also rushed for over 136 yards and 4 touchdowns, with a 59.5 completion percentage. He became the first rookie quarterback to score a rushing touchdown in each of his first 3 starts. Despite the way his season ended, the Colts were still all in on Richardson, and they are preparing for a 2024 year that could really help Richardson break out. Unfortunately, it brought more issues than solutions this year. Richardson had an okay game against the Texans, 9 for 19, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 50 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, but he did throw over 50%. However, against the Packers and the Bears, he struggled even worse. Throughout both of those games, he threw for over 300 yards, 1 touchdown, just barely getting a 50% completion rate, and also 5 interceptions in between both of those games. To make matters worse, he was suffering an oblique injury that kept him out for the next 2 weeks. And then when he came back in week 8 against the Texans, more problems would occur. In a week 8 matchup against the Texans, Anthony Richardson had just broken a sack from Pro Bowl pass rusher Will Anderson. You know, I gotta give him credit, that's a really big thing to do. And then he managed to get away, but eventually he got tackled, and then out of nowhere, Anthony Richardson just came out of the game. No injury designation, nothing was wrong with him. Well, to him it was. He was just simply out of breath. To a lot of NFL fans, this was seen as soft, uncharacteristic of a quarterback. He didn't have an injury, he didn't tear anything. This guy was just simply out of breath. Bump being uncharacteristic for a quarterback, this was uncharacteristic for any NFL player. No NFL player comes out of the game for being out of breath. Unless they're hurt, dying, bleeding, they're not coming out of that game. Quarterbacks are supposed to be known for taking a lot of hits and withstanding them. They're supposed to be warriors. They're supposed to be leaders. Anthony Richardson was a captain, and to basically come out of that game for being tired basically showed everybody else on your NFL team the player you were. I mean, you got guys like Donovan McNabb who played with a broken ankle a broken ankle, and he played the entire game, no problem. I've seen quarterbacks get stuffed by 350-pound linemen, never came out of the game. His own teammate Ryan Kelly had to call him out about it too, saying, "We had a conversation about it, and I think he knows that's not the standard kind of conversation we had at that." I knew he's going to take some criticism for that, and rightfully so. That's a tough look, but he's also out there giving it his all for the team, right? It's not always pretty at times, an offensive low the last couple weeks, just a hard time getting it going at times. I thought we did some good things in the game. If anybody questions how hard he plays, I don't think that's the case. If you watch his film, surely we didn't move the ball effectively at times, but he's giving his everything for his team. He's young, and I'm sure it's a learning moment for him, and I'll leave it at that. And once again, another hurdle came for Anthony Richardson, as it was announced that he would be benched in favor of Joe Flacco. Some people thought this was because he was leaving the game. The others pointed to the fact that AR5 was throwing 44%, a league worst completion rate at the time. Steichen would of course be asked why he was benching Anthony Richardson in favor of Joe Flacco, and this is what he said: "It's a tough decision, but I thought he was in the best interest of our football team. I feel like Joe gives us the best chance to win right now." With that being said, I'm not giving up on Anthony by any means. I'm really not. He's a young player with a ton of talent. He'll continue this time to develop and grow as a professional. I think right now, sitting back and seeing a veteran that's done at a high level for a long time, you can develop that way as well. On the other hand, Richardson was also asked how he felt about this decision, and he simply said, "He told me they were going to go with Joe, and that was that. I tried to take in the information and just grow." He even asked, "Did Steichen explain why?" No, not necessarily. But Richardson also did take accountability on his own end, saying he's got to learn, he's got to perform better. So he took accountability on that end. Richardson would end up coming back in week 11 versus the New York Jets, and he was pretty good in this game. He completed 67% of his passes for 272 yards, a touchdown, and also 2 rushing touchdowns, including the game winner in the final minute, and the Colts would end up winning this game 28-27. He would do that once again versus the Patriots in week 13, leading a 19-play, 80-yard touchdown drive capped with a 2-point conversion with just under 15 seconds left, getting a huge comeback win over the New England Patriots. However, he would miss the final 2 games of regular season with back and foot injuries as the Colts missed the playoffs. Overall, Richardson ended the year with 1,814 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, with a 47% completion rate. To go deeper, he was in the 1 percentile of completion percentage over expected, the 20 percentile in turnover-worthy play percentage, and the 5 percentile in TD and INT, and also INT percentage alone. And he was also in the 3 percentile in passer rating. Yes, these numbers are bad. Yet again showing how much work AR needed as a passer. Still very raw. Injuries also continue to be a concern. He missed some games due to an oblique injury, as I said earlier, and also a back injury towards the end of the season. And after the end of the season, Chris Ballard would say this: "Like, we can't beat our head against the wall. We have to have competition at the position, just for the fact that 1, competition makes everybody better, and 2, he has not proven he can play 17 games. Obviously referring to Anthony Richardson. He would also make another interesting comment, saying that he held regrets towards Anthony Richardson's benching, admitting that it should have lasted longer in 2024 in order to help him benefit properly. So a lot of people now knew that the Colts were going to bring in a quarterback to start a competition for Anthony Richardson, but who would it be? There was a lot of rumors on who would it be, but it would end up being former New York Giants starting quarterback Daniel Jones. Jones was a starter for his 6th season for the New York Giants, even led them to the playoffs, even got a win, so he had the experience and somewhat of a playoff resume. He wasn't a great quarterback, but he had the experience, which is something coaches value a lot. The Colts made it clear that this was a QB competition, and AR was not just going to be given the job. And for AR5, this already got out to a bad start. AR5 would suffer a shoulder injury that kept him out of training camp the first couple of weeks, leaving Jones to get first team reps. And long story short, Jones kept getting first team reps while AR got second team reps, and it lasted all the way into the preseason until Jones would be officially named the starter for the Colts. Again, there's a lot of mixed reactions towards this move, but a lot of people, for the most part, were upset. Colts quarterback coach Cam Turner would be asked why he made his decision. He would simply say, the consistency is a big thing that shows up in just his approach in his operation at the line. Consistent, accuracy, and the overall decision making. He did a good job all throughout camp. Cam Turner would also be asked if he felt like Anthony Richardson failed the staff failed Anthony Richardson, or they failed each other. And this is what Cam Turner would say.
As a position coach, you want to see your guys succeed and be successful naturally. And, I feel like I've tried everything I can do, and I feel like he's given great effort in that aspect too. And I don't think either way, it's one or the other. I just think, right now it's not where the consistency is just not where we wanted it to be.
But there's a lot of controversy surrounding this move. For some people, they feel like the Colts drafted him in 2023, and now they're basically admitting they made a mistake of drafting him by benching him. Some people pointed to the fact that Daniel Jones also does nothing for this team. He can make a lot of the throws that AR5 can't make, but at the end of the day, Daniel Jones is also capped. His ceiling is not going to get any better. He's not going to do anything new as a player at this point. It's going to be the same offense that for the most part the Colts ran around Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew, and they're not going to get any better than 9-8. That's what a lot of people felt. But the fact that they are putting their jobs in the hands of Daniel Jones over the development of AR5 says a lot about this team. But like I said, I see the argument for both sides. At the same time, AR5 has been the worst quarterback in the NFL ever since last year, and on the other hand, benching him is not going to help him whatsoever. If he struggles, you kind of have to live with that. You're the team that took a chance on him, knowing coming into the NFL, he was as raw gets. And as a team, you are supposed to keep with him even with his struggles, no matter how bad it gets for the most part. Again, nobody is saying Anthony Lee is a good quarterback, but again, giving up on him like this tells you a lot about this management. And some people might have thought this might be a temporary thing and AR might be back at some point, but Shane Steichen made it clear Jones will be the permanent starter all season. There is no switching. Right now, AR is not really clear what's next for him. He's fully accepted the fact that he lost his starting job, and barring an injury or bad performance, which is very possible, he likely won't get the job back. Now, I asked earlier, did we hype up AR5 too much? Did GMs overvalue him? Did we look too much in for traits over production? Did coaching play a part? And the answer is all four. Richardson has been a very developmental prospect coming out of high school and college. He was just known for being a very athletic quarterback with tools, but never polished. He had a strong arm, but his mechanics and accuracy were all over the place. In hindsight, he should have stayed another year in college. A lot of scouts and analysts gave him way too much after that combine and nothing else. Once again, hyping traits over actual production. If you look at what this man did at Florida alone, this guy should have been a day 2 quarterback at best. That is typically where quarterbacks go who need the most development but also have high potential. Now the question, was coaching the issue for Anthony Richardson? I said earlier that giving the keys to AR5 too early was an issue. He was raw and needed more time on the bench that would have benefited him. Now, mentioning him is the issue. At this point, he needs reps. He needs playing time to develop. And benching him does no favors to him whatsoever at this point. You can even point to play calling as an issue, but then you have to point to Anthony Richardson's own issues himself. Consistency, accuracy, poor mechanics. You can coach to fix that, but at the end of the day, the quarterback has to go out and make it happen, which AR5 hasn't. Injuries also come into play, and they also don't help AR. He had a shoulder injury, as I said earlier, that kept him out of training camp, and that ended up being one of the bigger reasons why he ended up losing the starting job. Most of these unfortunately paved the way for Daniel Jones to be named the starter, so when it comes to developing, coaching may be the issue, but everywhere else, I'd say it's an AR5 problem more than it is coaching. Some of his issues are a thing a player has to fix himself and improve on, and at this stage, Richardson's path is clear. He must refine his skills, stay healthy, and find opportunities to develop. The potential is still there, but realizing it will take work, patience, and the right environment. Even if it seems his career might be over, there's always a chance. Sam Darnold had a career resurgence in 2024, and Geno Smith had one 2 years prior. He is also still 23, younger than both of these guys, which makes the chance of him doing it even better. Anthony Richardson's journey is a cautionary tale of immense potential, meeting the harsh realities of NFL development. He was hyped, talented, and raw, and while the Colts' decision to bench him may seem harsh, it reflects both his need for growth and the high-stakes nature of professional football. For Richardson, the story isn't over. With dedication and opportunity, he can still realize the superstar trajectory many envisioned when he entered the league, and hopefully he can turn around his career, because I would hate for a guy with this much potential to fall out of the league and just not work out. Whether he finds his way back to the starting job for the Colts, or he manages to get traded, we don't know, but regardless of what happens, all eyes will be on Anthony Richardson no matter what happens, and we'll see if one day he can realize his potential, or none of that will matter. He'll just end up being another what-if story in the NFL.
When it talks, nigga, what the fuck is he saying? You can ask his bitch and ask his bitch who the man. Lil' bro, them get the steppin' like parades about them bands. My lil' bitch Tinkerbell, cause I'm fly as Peter Pan. Yeah.